My question is, where do you think this team goes from here after what happened to them yesterday with what's left on the schedule moving forward?
Well, if I'm going off Bryson Eason, who I just had out to tape this week's Ball Club Confidential, to me, I don't worry about him. I mean, he's dialed in. Said that they've had several of them talk last night about not letting Alabama beat them twice, getting right back up on the horse. They know they still have a lot to play for the rest of the way. Not all is lost. And again, this is a football program for some of these kids that when they first got here was in shambles or they were not very good. And so, again, Tennessee has a chance to be 6-2 heading to November for only the second time since 2006. That was last year. So, I mean, like back-to-back seasons, they could do something they've not done in a while. So, I think that, they know kind of what's in front of them. So, again, basing it off my conversation with him, I'm not super worried about it. But, again, that's one person on the team. Got to kind of see where everybody is because, if half of them, struggle to get back up off the mat, then, it could have an effect.
Yeah, Josh Heupel's team's 6-1 coming off a loss since he's been the head coach at Tennessee. So he's done a good job with his team coming off losses. This one is as painful as they get. And you're not playing, no offense to UTSA, you're not coming off of a loss to Florida and taking on UTSA. This is a Kentucky team that's had a week off, Austin. This is a Kentucky team that struggles to throw the football, but they're good running the football. And Tennessee's played 2 really physical games the last 2 weeks. But they've rotated a lot of guys on the defensive front, which should help, right? I mean, they shouldn't have a bunch of guys just completely beat down because most guys are averaging 25, 30 snaps at most on the defensive line, correct?
That's right. And in reality, now the linebackers didn't rotate as much yesterday, but they've done it, and neither did the corners. But they've done a good job of rotating throughout the season at all positions. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I'm not sure anybody's super beat up. Now, I continue to think the wide receivers are just thin. And so, Squirrel White had a nice game yesterday. I think his health is paramount for their success the rest of the year. I think it's important to keep him upright. I thought Ramel Keaton rebounded to a degree yesterday. Dante Thornton just seems lost at this point. And then the sophomores or redshirt freshmen are kind of still trying to figure things out. So the passing game's got to continue to come along. Tennessee's going to have to run the ball better against Kentucky. It's not the same as Alabama's front. So, again, I think Tennessee has a chance to bounce back. And a lot of what Kentucky does well, Tennessee is strong at as well. So Kentucky loves to run it. Well, what's Tennessee do well defensively? They stop the run.
Right.
He's not, a great passing team. Leary struggled. Tennessee should be able to get after him when he does throw it. So, I mean, I'm not, they've had 2 weeks to prepare. They're coming off the bye week. Tennessee's coming off 2 extremely tough physical games against A&M and Alabama. But I would still argue that Tennessee's not a good matchup for Kentucky for what Kentucky does well.
All right, got a couple of questions here that I want to get into before we get out. We've taken a bunch of comments tonight on the side and a bunch of questions because, quite frankly, I just felt like everybody needed to talk about it, right, AP?
Sure.
Michael Nelson has this one, and I think it's an interesting question because I think sometimes guys say stuff, they don't necessarily mean it how it sounds. Elijah Herring with the comment last night, we just kind of thought Alabama was going to roll over. I don't really know that anybody in the Tennessee locker room thought Alabama was beat when they went into the locker, that the game was over at 20-7. I'm not sure that's really what he was implying when he said that, but he wanted to know, Michael wants to know, what did Joe mean when he said some players didn't do their job and kind of took turns at that? And it's his job as a leader as a quarterback to lead his team better. That's on him. What do you make of that? Do people make too much of that comment there? What do you think that meant?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, we talk in front of the public on the general's quarters every day. And I mean, there are some things that I say that get taken out of context, or sometimes I say things and I mean it a certain way, but it comes out a different way. And I don't do a good job of conveying my thoughts. And so, so I can only imagine as a 19-year-old, Elijah Herring or a 22, 23-year-old Joe Milton, you're naturally going to say some things, and it come out the wrong way. You didn't really mean it that way, or it's just altogether confusing. So, there was some stuff made, I guess, was it Aaron Beasley made the comment at Florida or whatever he said. And, I don't think you really understood it. So much of those rooms are kind of hectic. There's a lot of people in there. You got photographers in there working and making noise. And so sometimes, again, I'm not saying that that's the case here. I'm just saying, like, as a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid with the lights on you and a lot of noise in the room and you're trying to hurry up and get done, like, you could be easily confused by some things. Again, that's not be the case here. I'm just, spitballing.
Yeah, but I mean, the obvious follow-up people have is, oh, there's dissension or there's issues. He's calling his teammates out. That's not what I take from that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't feel like that was.
Well, everybody's grassy knoll hubs. After a loss, everybody's got the grassy knoll conspiracies, and last year it was. All kinds of stuff after the South Carolina game. I mean, that stuff happens every time they lose. Listen, the people that are, I've seen too many posts on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, on the general's quarters or wherever else. I'm not out on Josh Heupel yet, but are you drunk? Like, what is happening here? I mean, like, the dude was 8-0 a year ago going to November. This year he has a chance to be 6-2. These things haven't been done since 2006, Hubs. I had just graduated college. You were in your 30s. I mean, like, life was a much better place. Bill Martin had hair at the time, Tennessee's SID. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, stop. You make yourself sound foolish. Again, they lose to Kentucky this weekend. That'll draw the ire of a ton, and understandably so. This is a game Tennessee's, routinely won over the years. This is a game you have to win. Kentucky, Missouri. You win these two games, you're going to be 9-3 at worst. And then it all comes down to a November date at home with Georgia. And who knows where they are, if Bowers is back or whatever. The 2 of the next 3 weeks at Kentucky, at Missouri, they will tell the tale on whether you're 7-5, 8-4, 9-3, or potentially having a chance to play for a 10-2 season against Georgia.
Yeah, and first thing first is you gotta get right and get going for Kentucky and get that right. And Floyd's got a couple of questions here, and I'm going to combine this with another question that we had up here from Austin A. Austin A wants to know, what do you got to do? What does Tennessee got to do to improve short yardage? And Floyd wants to know, when there's 10 in the box like Alabama had, does Tennessee not have the option to get out of that play? Does Joe have the option to get out of that? I don't have an answer for what Joe has or doesn't have on 4th and short on the short yardage plays there. In terms of fixing the short yardage stuff, Austin, I think you got to be more creative, right?
You do. And again, I think, a year ago you could get under center, you could hand it to a Princeton fan or whatever. This year, they've not really got under center. I think they've had the one under center play. They handed it on the end around to Brew. It got a first down. They're 1 of 6 on 4th and 1 or whatever on the year, whatever your stat you said last night. Yeah. I mean, it's not good enough. This offensive line's not got Jerome Carvin. It doesn't have Darnell Wright. They're not as good in short yardage, it appears. Again, through just based off what we've seen. Their inability to pick up 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, to extend drives, to close out games, those type of things are things you have to do in this league. There are things you may have to do Saturday at Kentucky to close it out. And, this is something that is a real bugaboo. I'll never understand. I'm going to ask Hype tomorrow. Have you looked at doing the tush push? Everybody else in college football has, or pro football, and Joe's 6'5" and 235. I guess, whether it's as creative as spreading them out and doing some different things, or if it's just as simple as, putting him under center and having, a couple of big guys get behind him and just shove him forward. Tennessee's got to figure out a way to convert 3rd and 1, 4th and 1s, because, these are key things that right now are hurting this football team, especially if you're going to go for it on 4th and 1 on your side of the 50 on the road.
All right, a couple other questions here. We're going to get out the door here at the top of the hour. Tony wants to know, does Jackson Ross have the option to run? Looks like he could have picked up a first down for sure on one of those punts. Do you know if he has the option to run? I don't think he has that option to call that himself. I think that's going to be a call from the sideline.
Listen, Britton Colquitt, he decided to throw it in 2005, and that was not super well received. Like if Jackson Ross took off running and didn't make it, what would Tennessee fans be losing? I mean, Eckler would be over there yanking his hair out. Heupel, same thing, and all the Tennessee fans would lose their minds. The kid literally had one of the best punting days, if not the best punting day in Tennessee football history on Saturday. He looked like Ray Guy reincarnate out there, and so he is a weapon. Once he got past the jitters of the game against Virginia, he has been ridiculous. And so you let Jackson Ross do what Jackson Ross does, which is boot it with his right foot, his left foot. I mean, I'm telling you, man, that guy has been spectacular.
Yeah, he has. By the way, how good was he yesterday? His average yesterday was 53 yards, which is a single game record.
There you go.
That he broke a Colquitt family record from 82-83 is when you're talking about there. So he had a terrific Kool-Aid McKinstry never found the ball. He never got comfortable trying to field the punt because of the way it was turning over or whatever. So he was terrific without a doubt. And he's been great, as you mentioned, Austin, really since those first 3 punts. He settled in early part of his first home game after that first punt, and he was good to go from there. Jason Brown wants to know, is Joe seeing the field well? Do we have receivers running open like we had the last couple of years?
No, we don't. That's part of the problem. You know, Tennessee's not been able to get separation with the receivers. I'm not saying Joe's seeing the field perfectly. I'm just saying, like, it's not like it was a year ago where guys were just running wide open, or even Joe's first couple of starts back in 21. Like, you know, they just don't have anybody running wide open. And, you know, I thought Joe, you know, threw it pretty well yesterday. Was he perfect? No. But, I mean, you know, could he put a little more touch on the ball to Jacob Warren? I think that's that's a touchdown if he puts any kind of touch on it at all, or throws it down just a touch. I mean, you know, when 6'7" Jacob Warren can't get to it, I mean, just pretty high. And of course, he threw it like a rocket. You know, but I mean, at the same time, like, he threw a great touch pass to McAllen Castles down there in the first half. And then, you know, again, the second half started with them backed up against the, you know, their goal line, 3 runs and a punt, and they just kind of never got going, never got it flipped around. And again, Joe's still looking for his first 300-yard game of his career, and, you know, at some point he's going to have to pull one of those off.
Yeah, and look, if you just, I mean, I've said this to multiple people today. If you just said going into the game on Friday, Austin, if I'd have said, hey, Joe's going to complete 69% of his throws, he's going to throw for right at 270 yards, no interceptions, and he's going to throw 2 touchdown passes, where would you have given Tennessee's opportunities to win the game?
I would have told you that if they were losing, it was going to be by less than 14.
And he also was the leading rusher. Now, the flip side of that is if on Friday I would have said, hey, Austin, Tennessee is going to turn it over. I won't call the last turnover on downs because Tennessee was whatever on 4th down there. But Tennessee is going to turn it over essentially 3 times, twice on downs and then 1 on the fumble in their own territory Saturday at Tuscaloosa. What would you give in Tennessee's chances of winning?
Slim to none.
Yeah, and that's what happened, and that's what killed Tennessee in this game was those 3 turnovers. Because a turnover on downs, there's the same thing as a fumble, giving you a short field, and that's what happened there. So as we wrap it up here, I want to thank everybody for all their questions and comments tonight. Again, I felt like this was the best way to do it. I didn't think anybody necessarily was interested in hearing a scouting report on Kentucky tonight or anything else. Just wanted to kind of talk ball and kind of talk through what happened yesterday afternoon. As the page gets turned, Austin, 2 things. 1, how do you think Josh Heupel handles the officiating questions tomorrow? Is this a Belichick we're on to Kentucky situation? And 2, how you mentioned Bryson Easton, you think that this team's going to be able to turn the page. How big of a challenge is this to turn the page? Is it easier for players to do than fans want to give them credit? That doesn't mean players don't care. I'm not suggesting that. But is it easier for the player to move on to the next game as opposed to fans?
Yes, and players do care. Bryson even said that during the episode. How much, you know, it hurt him yesterday, but he's that much more, you know, amped and ready to get to Saturday, like to wash the taste out of his mouth, to go out there and knock some heads and just, you know, get out there and play ball. And so I think that's simple, easy. And you never know. I may ask Heupel again. You know, once you watch the film, did you feel like it was one-sided, and just let him stare at me again?
I give him credit. He had a lot he wanted to say there, and
and that was the point. He could do it one of two ways. He could go
without getting himself in trouble.
He could go scorched earth,
right,
or he could handle it like he did and still get his point across that the officiating was bad. So I'm sure when they wwent back, and I don't know how many plays did they turn into the league office, because it's normally 7 or 8. I bet you it was double that, because I mean it was atrocious.
Yeah, atrocious. Yeah, I would say, or if you're at the point where you say, hey, it doesn't really matter anyway, how many of these are we really going to turn in? I mean, that's what we don't know. I mean, somebody asked earlier on this about officials being, evaluated after every game. The league office says they are. We have no idea what that evaluation looks like, because there's not any transparency with any kind of that stuff from the league office.
Nothing ever happens to these guys. I mean, are you kidding me?
Right. That's the way it's been for years.